Lance, no colony wants us, said the outcast, and the captain took them aboard. The alarm screamed through the cargo bay as Jake Miller watched the atmosphere gauge plummet. His freighter, the Pathfinder, had taken damage during the asteroid field crossing, and now oxygen leaked from 3 hull breaches. Behind him, 47 refugees huddled against the cold metal walls, their eyes wide with terror. They were the unwanted ones, the genetic outliers that every human colony in the sector had rejected. Too different, the administrator said. Lance. Too risky for our pure bloodlines. Jake had found them dying on Station 12, abandoned in a quarantine zone with no food and failing life support. Lance. The station master had refused to let them board any outbound vessel. They carried markers, old Earth mutations that had resurfaced after centuries of space radiation exposure. Lance. Nothing dangerous, nothing contagious, but enough to make them pariahs in a society obsessed with genetic perfection. He had broken about 15 laws getting them onto his ship, Lance. Now they might all die anyway. The hull groaned as pressure shifted. A young woman named Lisa stepped forward from the group, her skin bearing the telltale silver patches that marked her as different. She had 6 fingers on each hand, another mutation that colonies deemed unacceptable. Lance. Captain, let us help, she said. We know ships. We've worked maintenance on every station that would have us before they kicked us out. Jake hesitated. His crew consisted of exactly 1 person, himself, and his aging repair drone had shorted out 2 days ago. Lance. Pride warred with necessity. These people had been treated like garbage their entire lives, and here he was, their last hope, about to fail them because he was too stubborn to accept help. Lance. The breach is in Section 7, he said. Pressure suits are in the locker. Lisa moved fast. Lance. She grabbed 3 others, including a teenage boy named Kevin, whose eyes could see into the infrared spectrum, an advantage in dark corridors. They suited up while Jake rerouted power to the emergency seals. Lance. The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Through the porthole, Jake saw their destination, New Terminus Colony, growing larger against the black. Lance. They had 20 minutes of air left, maybe less. The colony would never accept his passengers, but he had a plan. Lance. An old friend named Pete Harrison ran a mining operation on the dark side of the moon that orbited New Terminus. Pete didn't care about genetics. Lance. He cared about people who could work hard and wanted a chance. The comms crackled. Lance. Freighter Pathfinder. This is New Terminus Control. You are not cleared for approach. Lance. Turn back immediately. Jake ignored them. Lance. Lisa and her team had reached the breach. Through the internal cameras, he watched them work with practiced efficiency, welding patches and sealing joints. Lance. They moved like they had done this 1,000 times before because they probably had. When you were unwanted, you learned every skill that might keep you alive. Lance. Pathfinder. We will fire on you if you continue approach. Jake switched channels. Pete, you there? Always, old friend. Lance. I see you've got company. 47 souls who need work and won't ask questions. Send them down. Lance. I'll have the tunnels ready. The last breach sealed. Atmosphere stabilized. Lance. Lisa's silver-patched face appeared on his screen, smiling despite everything. We're good, Captain. Jake punched the thrusters, angling away from New Terminus and toward the dark side of its moon. Lance. Behind him, the refugees began to breathe easier. Ahead, somewhere in the black, lay a new beginning. Lance. the Pathfinder descended through the thin atmosphere of the mining moon. No gardens here, no gleaming towers like those on New Terminus, Lance. Just raw rock, deep tunnels, and people who had chosen freedom over comfort. Pete Harrison stood at the landing pad, a weathered man of 50 with a mechanical arm and a reputation for taking in strays. Lance. Jake opened the cargo bay doors. The refugees filed out slowly, uncertain. Lance. They had been rejected so many times that hope had become a foreign concept. Lisa was last, stopping beside Jake. Lance. Why did you help us? She asked. Jake thought about his daughter, dead 15 years now from a genetic condition the colonies could have treated but refused because she had the wrong markers. Lance. Because someone should have helped me once, and they didn't. Pete stepped forward. Welcome to Darkside Station, Lance. You work, you eat, you live. No questions about where you came from. Lance. We're all outcasts here. A woman named Maria, whose mutation gave her bones twice the normal density, started to cry. Lance. Not from sadness, but from relief. Kevin, the boy with infrared vision, stared at the tunnel entrances with wonder. Lance. Down there, his gift would be invaluable. Jake prepared to leave, but Pete grabbed his arm. Lance. Stay the night. We're having a situation, Lance. What kind? The kind where New Terminus wants to shut us down. They're sending enforcers tomorrow, Lance. Jake looked at the refugees, at their faces full of cautious hope, and made a decision that would change everything. Then I guess I'm not leaving yet. The freighter's engines powered down, and Jake Miller, cargo captain and reluctant hero, walked into the tunnels to prepare for war. Lance. New Terminus didn't send enforcers. They sent an entire security battalion with enough firepower to crack the moon in half. Lance. Commander Ellen Price led them, a woman whose reputation for enforcing genetic purity laws had earned her the nickname the Cleanser in the outer colonies. She stood on the bridge of the enforcement carrier Righteous, studying scans of Darkside Station with cold precision. Lance. 47 genetic deviants confirmed on site, her tactical officer reported, plus approximately 200 registered colonists who violated settlement protocols by harboring them. Harboring? Lance. They're breeding with them, contaminating the gene pool further. Lance. New Terminus wants this ended before it spreads. Her second officer, a younger man named Greg, shifted uncomfortably. Commander, they're just minors. They haven't committed any violent crimes. Ellen turned her ice-blue eyes on him. Lance. Genetic deviance is violence, Lieutenant. Violence against humanity's future. Lance. Launch the drones. I want a full tactical picture before we move in, Lance. Down in Darkside Station, alarms wailed through the tunnels. Pete Harrison had surveillance satellites, illegal but functional, and they had picked up the carrier's approach 3 hours ago. Lance. Now he stood in the central command hub with Jake and a dozen others, planning their defense. We can't fight a carrier, said Marcus Webb, the station's chief engineer. Lance. His mutation gave him enhanced mathematical processing, making him the best systems designer in the sector. They'll cut through our shields in minutes. Jake studied the tactical display. The carrier was positioning itself in high orbit, preparing for either a bombardment or a landing operation. Either way, everyone in the station would be dead or captured within hours. Lance. We don't fight them head-on, Jake said. We make them think twice about attacking. How? Pete asked. Lance. The mining charges. You've got enough explosive here to destabilize the entire moon. Lance. We threaten to blow it if they attack. The room went silent. Lance. Marcus was the first to speak. That would work, Lance. The debris field would bombard New Terminus for weeks. They'd lose millions of people. Lance. That's insane, Greg's voice crackled over the comms. He had broken into their encrypted channel. Lance, Commander Price will call your bluff. Who is this? Pete demanded. Someone who doesn't want to see 200 people die for no reason, Lance. Commander Price doesn't bluff. If you threaten New Terminus, she'll kill you all just to make a point. Lance. Jake felt ice in his stomach. Then what do you suggest? Give me 12 hours? Lance. I might have another option. The channel went dead. Pete looked at Jake. Lance. Do we trust him? Do we have a choice? Lisa entered the command hub, still wearing her pressure suit from the earlier repairs. Captain, we've armed the miming charges like you asked. Lance. But if we actually detonate them, we all die too. I know, Jake said quietly. So it's suicide either way, unless that officer comes through. The hours crawled past. The Righteous held position in high orbit, its weapons hot but not firing. Commander Price was clearly waiting for something, though Jake couldn't guess what. Lance. The station's population huddled in the deepest tunnels, preparing for the worst. Kevin, the boy with infrared vision, had volunteered to monitor the surface. Lance. His unique sight could detect heat signatures through rock, giving them advance warning of any landing parties. He sat in a small observation post, his eyes scanning the darkness above. Lance. Captain Miller, his voice cracked over the radio. I see something weird. Define weird. Heat blooms, Lance. Lots of them. But they're not from the carrier. They're coming from New Terminus itself. Jake pulled up the satellite feed. Lance. Kevin was right. Across the surface of New Terminus, in every major city, heat signatures were appearing. Lance. Not explosions, but something else. Something coordinated. Lance. Pete's face went pale. Those are protests, Lance. Thousands of them. The comm channel burst to life. Lance. Greg's voice breathless with excitement. I leaked the story, Lance. Every news network in the sector now knows about the genetic outcasts you're harboring and about Commander Price's orders to eliminate them. The colonies are going crazy, Lance. Half of them support you. And the other half? Jake asked. Lance. Want you dead even more. But here's the thing, Lance. New Terminus government can't afford the PR disaster of massacring refugees on live feeds. Every camera drone in the system is pointed at that moon right now. Commander Price's face appeared on every screen in the station simultaneously. Her expression was fury barely contained. Attention, Darkside Station. You have 24 hours to surrender all genetic deviants for processing. Lance. Refuse, and I will carry out my orders regardless of public opinion. The screen went black. Lance. Pete slumped in his chair. So we bought a day. A day where the whole sector is watching, Jake said. Lance. That changes things. Maria, the woman with dense bones, stepped forward. She had been silent throughout the crisis, but now her voice carried quiet strength. Lance. Captain, we appreciate what you're trying to do, but maybe it's time we stopped running. Lance. What do you mean? I mean we go public ourselves, we tell our stories. Lance. Let people see we're not monsters or genetic time bombs. We're just people who want to live. Lance. Lisa nodded. She's right, Lance. We've been hiding our whole lives. Maybe that's the problem. Lance. Jake looked around the room at the refugees he'd rescued, at Pete and Marcus, and all the others who had risked everything to help them. An idea began forming. Audacious and possibly stupid, but it was better than waiting to die. Lance. Pete, do you still have that broadcasting array you built? The one that can hijack commercial satellites? Yeah, but it's illegal as hell. Good. Lance. We're about to break a lot more laws before this is over. Jake turned to the refugees. Who wants to tell their story to 6 billion people? 47 hands went up. Lance. The broadcast began at dawn, new terminus time. Every screen, every feed, every communication device in the sector suddenly carried the same image. Lisa's face, calm and resolute, her silver-patched skin clearly visible. Lance. My name is Lisa Chen. I was born on Earth Station 726 years ago. Lance. When I was 3, my colony exiled my family because of genetic markers we didn't choose and can't change. Since then, I've been rejected by 14 different settlements. Lance. I've worked every job that nobody else wanted, lived in places that would make you sick to see, and I've never committed a crime in my life. Until yesterday, when I helped repair a ship that was trying to save my life. Lance. The camera pulled back to show the others standing with her. Kevin, Maria, and dozens more, each with their own visible differences. Lance. Each with their own story. We're not asking for special treatment, Lisa continued. Lance. We're asking to exist, to work, to live, to be part of humanity instead of its garbage. Lance. Commander Price calls us genetic deviants. We call ourselves survivors. Lance. One by one, they spoke. Kevin talked about how his infrared vision had saved 3 people from a fire on Station 12. Lance. Maria described using her enhanced strength to prevent a hull breach that would have killed hundreds. A man named Chris, whose mutation gave him resistance to radiation, explained how he'd spent 5 years working in reactor cores that would kill normal humans in hours. Lance. We're not humanity's weakness, Chris said. We're its adaptation. Lance. We're what happens when our species refuses to die in the harshest environments ever known. The broadcast lasted 3 hours. Lance. By the time it ended, the sector had erupted. Protests weren't just on New Terminus anymore. Lance. They spread to every major colony. People who had never thought about genetic laws suddenly cared. Lance. Parents whose children carried minor mutations saw themselves in these outcasts. Lance. Workers who labored in dangerous conditions recognized the value of people like Chris and Maria. Commander Price tried to jam the signal, but Marcus had anticipated that. Lance. The engineer's enhanced mathematical mind had created a transmission protocol that adapted faster than any countermeasure. The message got through. Lance. Jake watched it all from the command hub, exhausted and wired on too much coffee. Pete sat beside him, monitoring the military channels. Lance. The righteous is powering down weapons, Pete said softly. She's being recalled. That's not enough. Jake opened a channel to Greg on the carrier. Lance. We need more than a temporary reprieve. I know. Greg sounded tired. I've been working on that. Lance. There are 17 officers on this ship who think these orders are wrong. We're requesting a formal investigation into Commander Price's authority to order extermination of civilians. Lance. Will it work? Maybe, probably not. Lance. But it'll buy time. Time. Lance. That seemed to be the best they could hope for. Jake looked at the refugees gathered in the tunnels below, at the miners who had risked everything to shelter them. and felt something shift in his chest. They had started something here, something that couldn't be stopped by one commander or one carrier. Lisa appeared at his shoulder. Lance, "Cap'n, we got a message. From Earth." Jake's eyebrows rose. "Lance, Earth? That's 2 months away." "Lance, what could they possibly want?" She handed him a data pad. The message was short, from someone named Director Amanda Foster at the Earth Genetic Heritage Institute. "Lance, we've seen your broadcast. We've been studying these mutations for 20 years. Lance, they're not deviants. They're human evolution adapting to space environments. Lance, we're offering full sanctuary on Earth and funding for a research initiative. All refugees welcome." Lance, "No conditions." Jake read it twice, not quite believing. "Lance, Earth, the homeworld that most colonists had never seen. Lance, offering not just safety, but validation." "Is this real?" Lisa whispered. "Lance, only one way to find out." Jake looked up at Pete. "How fast can you get every refugee in this sector to Earth?" Lance, "Not fast enough for my taste, but we'll make it work." The command hub erupted in cheers. People hugged, cried, and for the first time in their lives let themselves hope for something more than survival. Lance, Commander Price's face appeared one last time on the screens. Her expression was defeat masked as professional courtesy. Lance, Darkside Station, you have 24 hours to evacuate before we conduct orbital surveys. After that, this moon returns to new terminus authority. Lance, "Acknowledged," Jake replied. "We'll be gone in 12. The channel closed. Lance, Pete clapped Jake on the shoulder. "You just started a revolution, you know that? I just gave some people a ride." Lance, they started their own revolution. Over the next 12 hours, Darkside Station transformed into organized chaos. Lance, every ship in the sector that sympathized with the refugees' cause volunteered to help with the evacuation. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even some military vessels whose crews had seen the broadcast and made their own choices about whose orders to follow. Lance, Jake's Pathfinder was among them, of course. He had started this journey alone with 47 souls. Lance, now he was part of a fleet of 63 ships carrying over 3,000 refugees who had heard about Earth's offer and abandoned their hiding places across the sector. Lisa stood beside him on the bridge as they prepared for the jump to Earth. Lance, you know this won't end the persecution, right? There are still colonies that will enforce genetic purity laws. Lance, I know, but it's a start. Why, though? Why did you risk everything for us? Jake pulled up an old photograph on his console. A young girl with auburn hair and eyes that saw colors beyond the normal spectrum. Lance, his daughter, Amy, who had died because a colony refused her treatment. Because she deserved better. Lance, you all deserve better. The fleet jumped, leaving the new terminus sector behind. Lance, Commander Price watched them go from the Bridge of the Righteous, her career in ruins but her conviction unshaken. She would find other ways to enforce genetic purity. Lance, other places where her authority would not be questioned. But for now, in this moment, she had lost. Lance, the journey to Earth took 47 days. Jake spent most of it helping refugees adapt to the idea that they might actually have a future. Lance, Kevin practiced reading star maps with his infrared vision, discovering he could detect heat patterns in cosmic dust clouds that normal sensors missed. Maria trained in enhanced cargo handling, her dense bones letting her work in high-gravity environments. Chris volunteered for every dangerous task, his radiation resistance making him invaluable when they passed through a solar storm. They weren't passengers anymore, Lance. They were crew. Lisa had become something unexpected. A leader, Lance. She organized classes, helped resolve conflicts, and gave speeches that kept hope alive even when the journey seemed endless. Jake watched her grow into the role with quiet pride. Lance, you'd make a good captain, he told her one night in the mess hall. She laughed. Lance, I can barely run my own life. How would I run a ship? The same way I did, Lance, by caring more about the people on it than anything else. On day 47, Earth appeared in the viewports. Lance, blue and white and achingly beautiful. Most of the refugees had never seen a planet, only stations and moons. Lance. They pressed against the windows, silent with wonder. Director Amanda Foster met them at the orbital platform. Lance. She was older than Jake expected, with silver hair and warm brown eyes. Behind her stood a team of scientists and administrators, all wearing expressions of genuine welcome. Lance. I'm glad you made it, she said, shaking Jake's hand. We've prepared housing and facilities. Once. Everyone will have access to medical care, education, and job training. What about the genetic research? Lisa asked. Lance. Amanda smiled. That's entirely voluntary, Lance. We believe your mutations represent humanity's future in space, but your people first. Research subjects never, Lance. Over the next weeks, the refugees settled into their new lives. Kevin entered a program training scouts for deep space exploration. Lance. Maria joined a construction crew building habitats on Mars. Chris became an instructor at a reactor safety facility. Lance. Each found their place, their gifts valued rather than feared. Jake prepared to leave, his cargo hold empty and his contract fulfilled. Lance. But before he could launch, Lisa caught him at the dock. Stay, she said. Lance, we need someone to coordinate shipping between Earth and the outer colonies. Someone we trust. I'm just a cargo hauler. You're the man who saved 3,000 lives, Lance. You're the man who started a revolution. Stay and help us finish it, Lance. Jake looked up at the Pathfinder, his home for 20 years. Then he looked at Earth spinning below, full of people who had been given a second chance. Lance. His daughter's face flashed through his mind one last time, and he knew what she would want him to do. Okay, he said. Lance. I'll stay. The news spread through the outer colonies like wildfire. Earth was accepting genetic refugees. Lance. Not just accepting, but celebrating them. Within 6 months, 10,000 more arrived. Lance. Within a year, 50,000. Each brought their own mutations, their own adaptations, their own stories of rejection and survival. Commander Price tried to stop it. She rallied support from hardline colonies, passed stricter laws, and even attempted military blockades. Lance. But for every ship she turned back, 10 more found different routes. Lance. The tide had turned, and no amount of force could reverse it. Jake received a message from Pete 1 year after the first evacuation. Lance. Darkside Station had been converted into a way station for refugees heading to Earth. New Terminus had tried to shut it down 3 times and failed each time. Glance. Public opinion had shifted too far. You should see this place now, Pete wrote. Lance, we've got people from every corner of the sector passing through. Your revolution is working, old friend. Lance. Jake stood on the observation deck of the orbital platform, watching ships arrive and depart below. Lisa had indeed become a captain, commanding her own vessel in the refugee transport fleet. Kevin had discovered 2 habitable moons using his unique vision. Maria was designing structures that could withstand environments that would crush normal buildings. The outcasts had become pioneers. Earth's genetic research bore fruit faster than anyone expected. The mutations weren't random errors, as the colonies had claimed. They were rapid evolutionary responses to space radiation, low gravity, and other environmental pressures. Humanity was adapting to the cosmos in real time, and they had been punishing their own future for it. 5 years after the evacuation, the first interstellar colony ship launched from Earth. Its crew was entirely composed of genetic variants, chosen specifically because their adaptations would be crucial for surviving the journey to another star. Commander Price watched the launch from a prison cell on New Terminus. She had been convicted of planning an unauthorized strike on Earth's refugee facilities. The colonies had turned on her, no longer willing to defend genetic purity at any cost. Jake didn't watch the launch. He was too busy coordinating the next wave of evacuations. There were still colonies that persecuted genetic variants, still people who needed rescue. The revolution wasn't over. It had just changed form. Lisa visited him in his office at the coordination center. She brought coffee and news from the outer sectors. We got word from the mining colonies near Proxima. They're ready to evacuate 500 refugees next month. That's the biggest group yet. We'll need more ships. Already arranged. Pete is bringing the Dark Side fleet. They sat in comfortable silence. 2 people who had been strangers a few years ago and were now partners in something larger than themselves. Outside the window, Earth continued its ancient rotation, nurturing the future that the colonies had tried to destroy. Do you ever regret it? Lisa asked. Giving up the quiet life for all this chaos? Jake thought about his daughter, about the 47 refugees he had found dying on Station 12. He thought about what humanity could become if it stopped fearing its own evolution. Not for a second, he said. The coffee was terrible, the work never ended, and the fight for acceptance continued across hundreds of worlds. But somewhere in the depths of space, genetic variants no longer had to hide. They no longer had to apologize for existing, and that was worth every sacrifice. Jake Miller, cargo captain turned revolutionary, smiled and opened the next evacuation request. The colony of New Horizon had 300 refugees ready to leave. Time to bring them home. The story of the outcasts became legend. In schools across Earth, children learned about the people who were rejected and the man who gave them sanctuary. The phrase, "No colony wants us," became a rallying cry for anyone facing discrimination, anyone told they didn't belong. But the real story wasn't in the legend. It was in the quiet moments. In Kevin teaching children to see beyond the visible spectrum. In Maria designing homes on distant worlds. In Chris training the next generation of reactor specialists. In Lisa commanding her ship, taking more refugees to safety. And in Jake, still coordinating evacuations at 70 years old, still answering every call for help, still believing that humanity's greatest strength wasn't genetic purity but its infinite diversity. The colonies eventually changed their laws. It took decades, but they changed. Commander Price's followers aged and died, replaced by people who had grown up knowing genetic variants as heroes rather than threats. On his deathbed, Jake received a message from the interstellar colony ship, Lance. It had reached its destination, a planet orbiting another star. The crew had established humanity's first extrasolar settlement. They named it New Beginning. "Thank you, Captain Miller," the message read, "Lance, for showing us that being human means accepting all of humanity." Jake closed his eyes, content. He had done what he set out to do. He had given the unwanted a chance, and they had used that chance to reach the stars, Lance. The revolution was complete, but the work, the beautiful, endless work of building a better humanity would continue long after he was gone, Lance. And that was exactly as it should be.